Britain has slapped massive sanctions as punishment for human rights abuses and thuggery on 8 Belarus officials, including its President Alexander Lukashenko and his son. The UK joined hands with Canada to impose the landmark punishments, accusing Lukashenko of a string of human rights abuses, including torture against opposition leaders and journalists. Hundreds of people have been forcibly slapped in jail for demonstrating against Lukashenko's brutal regime as civil unrest has increasingly gripped the entire country. Some have disappeared and many others have been thrown out of the country, denied re-entry in case they continue their peaceful campaign to unseat the tyrannical leader. Named senior officials were also accused of violently oppressing political adversaries, many of whom have disappeared or been forced to flee the country. Those hit by the new sanctions include police commanders and military leaders accused of violently suppressing political opposition, demonstrators and journalists. Sanctions include travel bans and the freezing of assets of despot's leader Lukasheno, his son Victor and Igor Sergeenko, who is head of the presidential administration. Canada has agreed to mirror the sanctions in a joint effort to force Belarus to stop increasingly violent clampdowns on demonstrations throughout the country. In a statement, the UK Foreign Office said, Alexander Lukashenko's regime is responsible for a string of human rights violations against opposition figures, media and the people of Belarus in the wake of rigged elections. Despite numerous calls from the international community, he has refused to engage in dialogue with the opposition, choosing instead to double down on his violent repression. Close quote. The sanctions come under a new punishment system called the Global Human Rights Sanctions Regime, which gives the UK power to come down hard on human rights abuses. Lukashenko, 66, has ruled the former Soviet country for 26 years, but has faced growing calls by opposition to stand down over corruption. He is the first leader ever to be sanctioned under the Global Human Rights Sanctions, and it means he cannot travel to the UK or channel money through UK banks. Britain has also doubled financial support to human rights groups fighting his brutal regime, increasing funding to £5 million over the next 2 years. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said, "Today the UK and Canada have sent a clear message by imposing sanctions against Alexander Lukashenko's violent and fraudulent regime. We don't accept the results of this rigged election. We will hold those responsible for the thuggery deployed against the Belarusian people to account, and we will stand up for our values of democracy and human rights." Close quote. It is only the second time this new type of sanctions has been used since they were launched in July. Then the Foreign Secretary announced new sanctions on 49 individuals and organizations involved in some of the most notorious human rights violations and abuses in recent years. They included 25 Russian nationals involved in the mistreatment and death of auditor Sergei Magnitsky. Also hit hard were 20 Sorde nationals involved in the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, 2 high-ranking Myanmar military generals involved in the systematic and brutal violence against the Rohingya people, and 2 organizations involved in forced labor, torture and murder in North Korea's gulags. The full thugs gallery of officials hit by the UK sanctions. 1. Alexander Lukashenko, President 2. Victor Lukashenko, son and national security advisor to the President of Belarus 3. Igor Sergeenko, Chief of Staff to the President of Belarus. 4. Yuri Karayev, Minister of Internal Affairs, Major General of Militia. 5. Alexander Barsyukov, Deputy Minister of Ministry of Internal Affairs and Chief of Public Security Police. 6. Yuri Nazarenko, Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs and Commander of Internal Troops. 7. Kazarbek Tabakov, Deputy Commander of Internal Troops of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. 8. Dmitry Balaba, Commander of the Special Purpose Police Unit of Minsk-Ankara Oman. Yesterday, the Belarusian Foreign Ministry said on Tuesday it would impose sanctions against some 300 officials from the Baltic states in retaliation for their imposition of travel bans on more Belarusian officials. The ministry said it would add about 100 officials from each Baltic state, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to its sanctions list. All of those hit are allies of NATO.